Did you know that some of the most powerful, soul-shaking songs in American history were first sung by people who were never meant to have a voice at all? Before we begin, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Black History Stories 13, where hidden history comes to life. Today, we're diving into the origins of Black spirituals, music born out of suffering, survival, coded resistance, and unbreakable faith during the long nightmare of American slavery. These songs didn't just appear out of nowhere. They came from a journey that started long before the enslaved Africans ever reached American shores. A journey that stretched across continents, across cultures, and across generations. The story. How spirituals began. When Africans were forced into slavery in the Americas, they brought with them a deep musical heritage, one of the oldest on earth. In many African societies, music was communication, music was prayer, music was therapy, music was resistance, music was community. So when enslavers stripped African people of their languages, their names, their families, and their homeland, music became the one thing they could not fully take away. 1. African music traditions became a lifeline. Enslaved Africans carried rhythms and styles from West and Central Africa, call and response, polyrhythmic beats, chanting, melisma, stretching one syllable over many notes, work music to keep tempo. These traditions survived even when drums were banned because enslavers feared they were being used to communicate secretly, so African people turned their voices into drums. 2. Christianity was forced on them, but they transformed it. Enslavers tried to use Christianity as a tool of control, giving sermons that said, "Obey your master. Your reward is in heaven." But the enslaved took those forced teachings and flipped them, turning Bible stories into messages of hope, freedom, and coded rebellion. Stories like Moses freeing the Israelites, Daniel surviving the lion's den, Ezekiel seeing the wheel, Joshua fighting the Battle of Jericho. These stories gave the enslaved a spiritual language for resistance. Became a secret code. Some spirituals carried double meanings. Wade in the water, instructions on how to escape without leaving tracks. Swing low, sweet chariot, coded message about the Underground Railroad. Steal away, a call to gather secretly for worship or escape. The enslaved used songs as escape signals, meeting alerts, warnings, maps. Music was never just music, it was a roadmap to freedom. Music helped the enslaved survive the unthinkable. Imagine the plantation, sunrise to sunset labor, back-breaking work, whips, chains, no privacy, no legal marriage, no protection for children, no rest for the spirit. Spirituals helped people endure what was meant to destroy them. They sang to keep their minds sound. They sang to remind each other they were human. They sang to stay alive. This is why so many spirituals sound both sad and triumphant at the same time. Some spirituals carried double meanings. Wade in the water, instructions on how to escape without leaving tracks. Swing low, sweet chariot, coded message about the Underground Railroad. Steal away, a call to gather secretly for worship or escape. The enslaved used songs as escape signals, meeting alerts, warnings, maps. Music was never just music, it was a roadmap to freedom. Music helped the enslaved survive the unthinkable. Imagine the plantation, sunrise to sunset labor, back-breaking work, whips, chains, no privacy, no legal marriage, no protection for children, no rest for the spirit. Spirituals helped people endure what was meant to destroy them. They sang to keep their minds sound. They sang to remind each other they were human. They sang to stay alive. This is why so many spirituals sound both sad and triumphant at the same time. They carry sorrow, strength, and hope in the same breath. 5. The birth of hush harbors. Because enslavers often banned African gatherings, people created secret churches in the woods. They were called hush harbors. There, they prayed, they shouted, they danced, they cried, they sang. To keep the sound from traveling, they would put wet blankets on the ground, face their voices into barrels, form circles to muffle the noise. These hidden meetings are where many spirituals were created. Places where enslaved Africans worshipped on their own terms, in their own rhythm, with their own God. Spirituals became America's first true folk music. By the 1800s, spirituals were fully formed, deeply African, deeply Christian, deeply coded, deeply emotional, deeply revolutionary. This was the first original music tradition created on American soil by people who were denied everything except their voices. These songs were not just hymns. They were survival tools, communication systems, protests, and prayers wrapped inside melody and rhythm. Black spirituals are the foundation of gospel, blues, jazz, soul, R&B, rock, hip-hop, and nearly every American music form today. Born in chains, yet sung with freedom in mind. This is the story of how Black spirituals were born. Out of kidnapping, bondage, ancient African memory, and the unstoppable determination to remain human in a world built to deny their humanity. It's a story that begins long before the plantation. It begins in Africa, the birthplace of rhythm itself. Before being forced into ships, African communities already had a vast musical system. Music was language, communication, ritual, healing, storytelling, history-keeping. From Ghana to Angola, people used drums to send messages over long distances, call and response to reinforce unity, griots to preserve history through song, complex harmonies, hand claps, foot stomps, and body percussion. When these people were chained and shipped across the Atlantic, enslavers thought they were stealing a workforce. They didn't know they were importing millions of musicians. During the Middle Passage, captives created rhythmic tapping and humming beneath the decks. Sometimes, the enslavers forced them to dance on deck to keep their bodies healthy for sale. Africans transformed that forced movement into a beat, defiant, ancestral, and spiritual. These early hums and rhythmic steps would one day become blues, jazz, gospel, rock, soul. But for now, they were survival. On the plantation, the enslaved were stripped of language, clothing, names, family, identity. But one thing could not be confiscated: memory. African melody, rhythm, and spirituality lived in the mind. Even when laws banned drums after slave revolts like the Stono Rebellion, enslaved Africans turned their bodies into instruments. Hand clapping, foot stomping, knee slapping, chanting, call and response. Out of this came a new musical expression, African roots reshaped under American oppression. Enslavers gave the enslaved a selective Christianity designed to control. Sermons preached, "Servants, obey your masters. Suffering is your duty. Heaven is your reward." But African people always had spiritual systems where ancestors guided the living. Spirit and music were connected. God interacted with people. Worship involved rhythm, movement, and emotion. So they quietly took Christianity and infused it with African soul. They created a faith of liberation, not submission, survival, not obedience, freedom on earth, not just in heaven. Bible stories of escape and deliverance resonated deeply. Moses leading the Jews out of Egypt, David fighting giants, Elijah going up in a chariot, God hearing the cries of the oppressed. The enslaved turned these stories into songs, heavily coded, deeply African, and unmistakably revolutionary. Spirituals were born in three spaces. A, the plantation fields. To survive backbreaking labor, enslaved Africans developed work songs. To keep time, to lift spirits, to communicate, to prevent mental collapse. The overseer heard singing, but the enslaved heard messages. Nighttime was the only time the enslaved could express themselves. They created cradle songs, lullabies, family grief songs, prayer songs. These laid the emotional foundation for spirituals. Hidden in the woods, enslaved Africans created secret worship services. Wet quilts across trees to muffle noise, circles formed to shield light, voices turned down, then up, then down again, stomping on soft earth to avoid sound. Here spirituals flourished, raw, honest, African, and powerful. They were created in darkness, but carried the light that kept families alive. Spirituals also became secret escape signals. Swing low, sweet chariot meant the Underground Railroad was near. Steal away meant an unsanctioned meeting. Wade in the water meant escape through rivers. Songs were the encrypted language of a people denied literacy. Spirituals had African rhythm, Christian language, hidden maps, deep emotion, communal participation, improvisation, call and response, syncopation, rhythmic surprise, blue notes, notes bent between major and minor. This mixture created the first distinctly African-American musical form. After 1865, Fisk Jubilee Singers, Hampton Singers, black choral groups began performing spirituals worldwide. Europeans and white Americans were shocked. The beauty, the depth, the sorrow, the prayer, and these songs traveled into early gospel, blues, jazz, civil rights protest songs. The spirituals became the root of the American musical tree. Like Cher, and subscribe to Black History Stories 13, where we break the silence.